my countrymen. You will recall that a couple of days ago I wrote 4 letters to Trump and Joe Biden, the two of them. Should Trump lose in these elections, which is very, very probable, then Joe Biden will have to act on my letter. My letters, there were 4 letters. One of the letters that I wrote to Donald Trump and Joe Biden concerns about the abuses of the Americans in the Philippines. Among them are the following. Let me read what I mentioned in my letter. There were many things committed by America against the Filipino people, but I focused on about 6 major crimes or wrongdoings that America committed in the Philippines. Number 1 was the taking of a huge number of gold bars from the Philippine mining companies or Philippine Baguio mines and keeping the huge Mungkado account at Sumitomo Bank and Chase Manhattan Bank. Number 2, the killing of 500,000 Filipinos based on the testimony of Mark Twain, alias Samuel Langhorne Clemens, killing of half of the population of the Philippines, which would be around 4 million people without due process of law. Number 3, the collective stripping of U.S. citizenship without due process of law. Roughly 10 to 20 million Filipinos were divested of their American citizenship without due process of law pursuant to Section 14 of Tidings-Partovi law. Number 4, the American taking credit for World War II victory. The victory was ours because the first time the Americans and the Japanese fought on Philippine soil, the Americans lost. And that's why MacArthur had to escape to Australia via submarine. The second time the Americans and the Japanese fought, well, they won, not because the Americans fought so hard, but most of the Filipinos did the fighting. I think the whole Filipino nation, loyal to America, with their unflagging loyalty to America, fought against Japan, and Japan lost. But in the process, we lost about 2 million people, whereas the Americans lost only 15,000, and they suffered a casualty of about 40,000 wounded. That is the 4th. The 5th is the abandonment of the Philippines after Second World War. Manila was leveled to the ground by the Americans and the Japanese fighting over the skies of Manila, in the skies of Manila, over Manila. And Manila was completely destroyed. There was not a single building standing. And it was the responsibility of America to repair that city and the other cities destroyed by the Japanese and also by America. They abandoned that. America abandoned that. I think upon orders of President Truman, MacArthur was sent to Japan to repair the damage done to Japan. But not the Filipinos, the country of the Filipinos, that fought so hard for the Americans, that made America won the war, but in reality, the Filipinos won the war. The victory was that of the Filipinos. I mean, the Filipinos won the war because they fought so hard, did most of the fighting, did most of the dying. And so, but the Americans did not give us credit for the victory during the Second World War. They claimed it. That's why the Japanese are not writing any history about the war because they lost in the Philippines. And the Americans are not also writing about the fight in the Philippines, the war in the Philippines, because they also lost in the Philippines. Both of them were losers in the Philippines. The only winners in the Philippines were, still are, the Filipino people. 6th, destroying the soul of Filipinos by calling the Filipinos animals. But after all the sacrifices we did for America, we were called animals. After all, sacrificing about 2 million lives upon the altar of American quest for freedom. About 2 million Filipinos died. We poured our blood, sweat, and tears on our soil in Vietnam, in Korea, in the battlefields of Europe, and the Americans through Donald Trump called us terrorists and animals. And so I am fighting for the soul of America, for the soul of the Philippines, to bring it back to where it was yesterday, to restore, to recover the glory and splendor and grandeur of yesterday that America has or had and the Philippines had. So to repeat, I reminded America of the huge number of gold bars taken from the Baguio mines and also from the gold bars of Yamasita, which Yamasita brought to the Philippines, the killing of half of the population of the Philippines based on the testimony of Mark Twain, the stripping of U.S. citizenship from Filipinos, about 10 to 20 million Filipinos without due process of law, America taking credit for World War II victory, which belongs to the Filipinos, the abandonment of the Philippines after World War II, and sending MacArthur to Japan to repair Japan, but not the Philippines, and of course, destroying the very soul of the Filipinos by calling the Filipinos terrorists and animals after all the sacrifices, the blood, sweat, and tears that the Filipinos shed for America. We were called animals, terrorists and animals. So I decided to file, I have not yet filed, I'm planning to file a complaint against America with the International Criminal Court and the International People's Tribunal based on what I mentioned, the 5 grounds that I mentioned, especially the murder of Filipinos, the genocide of Filipinos by America based on actual evidence, based on the testimony of Mark Twain, and of course to recover the gold and all the fortunes that they took from the Philippines, probably initially for safekeeping, but then later they forgot to return the gold bars to the Philippines. I have prepared to complain, and the one with the International People's Tribunal is against the genocide of the Filipino people by America, and I have the feeling that we will win, because sometime in September 2018, Donald Trump, maybe you don't know this, listen carefully, Donald Trump and Duterte were convicted for crimes against the Filipino people before the International People's Tribunal. So Trump is an ex-convict for crimes against humanity, for murdering the Filipino people with Duterte. Both of them were defendants and both of them were convicted. But I don't understand why the conviction of Trump has not been popular or has not been announced to the American people. And I will do the announcement myself to remind the American people that Trump is running for this presidency of America for the second time, in spite of the fact that he is an ex-convict. Before the world community, he was convicted. He was convicted of killing the Filipino people with Duterte. The crimes of Duterte were the same crimes charged against Trump, and the International People's Court, International People's Tribunal, the jurors convicted him unanimously for crimes against the Filipino people. And the other complaint that I prepared and is ready to file is the complaint, the same complaint which I'm going to file with the International Criminal Court. I am kind of hesitant to file this with the International Criminal Court because it is corrupted. I believe that this Fatu Bensouda, the prosecutor, is very corrupt, very, very corrupt. But I'm just trying to file that with the International Criminal Court, hoping that Fatu Bensouda will be changed. You remember I filed a case against Rodrigo Duterte for the crimes against humanity in the Philippines. But Fatu Bensouda, after promising to file the case with the judges of the ICC International Criminal Court. She forgot about it. I can only assume that she was given billions of money by both Duterte and Jinping to keep her quiet. Well, the lady looks like she's a criminal. She's corrupt. And then I think he was corrupted, so she forgot about it. It has been a long time, more than 4 years. And the evidences against Duterte were based on the admissions of Duterte, that he killed more than 1,700, that he killed more than 30,000, that he did all the things that I mentioned in my charges. They were all based on self-admitted evidences or statements. And therefore, there was not much need for a regular or a thorough hearing, because they were based on admissions by Duterte that he killed more than 1,700. Then he also killed more than 30,000, and so on and so forth. But Fatou Bensouda, who appears to be so corrupt, very, very corrupt, he sat down or is sitting down on the case up to this point. But in spite of that, I have prepared a complaint, drafted a complaint, criminal complaint against Trump for these crimes against humanity, which he committed together with Rodrigo Duterte. And again, there is not much need to prove that point, because they are already convicted before the International People's Tribunal. That conviction can be used as a basis for hanging both of them at the International Court at The Hague or somewhere in Europe. Hang them for the crimes committed against the Filipino people. To repeat, I prepared and are willing to file 2 complaints, criminal complaints against Donald Trump, should they not return the gold bars which they brought to Fort Knox for safekeeping, should they not release the money which General Moncado deposited with Subitum Bank and Chase Manhattan Bank and other banks in the United States. I need those money to organize a 20 million man army to oppose the Chinese invasion of the Philippines and restore democracy in our beloved country. I think I have said enough. Thank you, and good night.